in a different power conference program. Big Ten baseball, Nebraska didn't play any of the midweek, so you didn't get a chance to kind of warm up playing back at home in the state of Nebraska with a game at Omaha or at home with South Dakota State, but you did get your home opener and conference opener all at the same time this weekend. Doubleheader on Saturday, swept by Washington, salvaged the weekend with a win on Sunday. Just your impressions of this team, where it was a rough non-conference, but if you take care of business and you win every series through the league, you got a chance to win the league, and you can still maybe be in the regional hosting conversation. I don't necessarily see that happening with this team the way this first month or so has gone.
There's a lot of work to be done, and we knew that you were going into conference play already up against it with the loss of Mason McConaughey for the season. And so how do you attack the rotation? And we saw them roll out what they did. Will that change going into this weekend in California? And that road trip has now become massive. USC's come back down to life a little bit. UCLA's had some success. You hope that you can get Pepperdine. They've struggled, but it's just being on the road that long after a short little stint. Usually, Caleb, you remember when they would have their first homestand, it was typically a 2-week homestand, which I guess if you play those games last week in the midweek, maybe it feels a little bit like that. You get the 2 against Wichita State tomorrow and Wednesday, but this is a short-lived homestand for Nebraska. Well, first and foremost, they had to win yesterday.
Yeah.
And I don't even think from the standings, it's 3 games in the Big Ten right now. There's still plenty of games to be played, but I think for themselves mentally, they had to win that game. They had to just get everything that happened on that Saturday, and even some of the demons that have happened in non-conference play, and be able to at least have that to draw from. And you hope in the next 2 days that they're having success against Wichita State. The problem, and Ben and I talked about this a lot in the broadcast, is you're not seeing what they do on the mound and any success on the mound connected to maybe the play behind them defensively or to what is in the batter's box. And I'll tell you what I mean by that from an example. In the second game of that doubleheader on Saturday, Caden Brumball hits a 2-run shot. First of all, it was a great game. You're trending into one of those. It almost felt like a Friday night game. You had 2 really good pitchers, and they're throwing strikes, they're challenging hitters, and it was fun to watch.
Didn't give up any runs for the first 7 innings or 6.5 innings?
Yeah, 6 innings. And so you're in that situation where Caden Brumball comes up, he's got 2 strikes, and he gets into one, and all of a sudden it's 2-0, and you're thinking, okay, that was the spark Nebraska needed. They lost the first game. All right, here you go, and Will Walsh is still throwing really well. Well, you come right back out in the next inning where you need that shutdown inning. And Washington responds with a 3 spot of their own. So it's that inability to find that shutdown inning. It was that inability to get clean innings defensively when you got the first 2 batters. You get those first 2 outs, then all of a sudden it's a battle going on 3-2, and then you give up a 2-out walk. And then that walk all of a sudden gets into scoring position on a pass ball, or they just steal, and all of a sudden it's a clutch base hit here, or it's those 2-out runs that are happening. Those have been really hamstringing this team. And then on the mound, it's one thing to have the count leverage and to get ahead of hitters, but now you're starting to look at the location too, where you're seeing a lot of middle pitches in 1-2 counts, where you should be seeing a guy really having a chase maybe outside the zone, almost to the point where Nebraska pitchers have been too fine at times where they've been hittable. So there's just that level, and you heard Will Bolt talk about it, just questioning just the overall level of toughness of this team. And I think the reason he did that is because he knows, at least felt pretty confident about what he had coming in when it came to that part of it, that you shouldn't have to worry about this team. If they get hit in the face, that they will come right back with their own counterpunch. They haven't seen that as much. And so, and the thing that was a little bit more jarring this weekend than anything, and I know people might roll their eyes at this, since Will Bolt has taken over as the head coach in Nebraska, this has been one of the more elite defensive teams in college baseball. It got downright sloppy this weekend. And the reason I think some people might roll their eyes is because Washington did not handle the baseball well either. They were an error machine, but it didn't hurt them. And so they were able to play at least solid offensive baseball despite all of that. That's what you want to see Nebraska be able to do too. If that they're having maybe one of those innings or just one of those games where they're not handling the baseball very well, that you got other guys in that lineup, given the amount of college innings that they've logged, that they can make up for that in the batter's box. It just hasn't happened consistently.
Nebraska opponents have more hits over these games. And so some of this, you look at what Nebraska is doing at the plate, but also what the pitching is doing, giving up more hits than your team is getting for you. 121 to 109. Nebraska has scored more runs, 6 more runs over the course of the season so far. Nebraska's pitchers have issued more walks than Nebraska has worked around, and Nebraska has struck out more at the plate than its pitchers have notched for strikeouts. Nebraska hitting 245 as a team. Nebraska's opponents hitting 273. So in all of that, weird positive to have scored more runs with all of those factors. But you're seeing that part, especially on the hits and the walks, to where you're not putting yourself in a position for success. If you're out hitting your opponent and you're drawing more walks, you're just not getting the timely hit. You're just not getting it done in the timely situation. But when you're losing both of those, it says you're not in enough situations to be getting those timely hits or those timely, even the other team getting a throwing error or something. And that was where Nebraska had a collapse, two errors in an inning, and that was kind of all she wrote in one of the games this weekend.
Well, and I'll throw another number out there on Nebraska's stats. I mean, after 2 games, after that Saturday alone, Washington had 10 doubles.
Yeah.
So it's the extra base hits as well. I talked about the inability to get that third out after getting the first 2. You get that second out, all of a sudden a guy comes up, he rips a double, he's already in scoring position. Yeah. So all of a sudden you're a single away from getting a run when you should have been out of the inning, or hopefully you could, a single, 2-out single, you can still keep him at bay. Guy can still hit, get a single himself, and you're still not scoring him from first base. So it's little things like that. And that's where I talk about just the location collectively of the pitching staff, where they've almost accounted for too much of the plate in some of those situations. And so that has been something that, and this is the other part about it, is when it comes to confidence of this team and things that can be emphasized and things that can at least be taught, I absolutely have all the confidence in the world. The guy that is teaching this pitching staff, is coaching this pitching staff, and understands it more than any of us will, is seeing that stuff too, and they're making adjustments. The question is, can you do that physically on the mound? There's only so much Rob Childress can do. There's only so much Will Bolt can do. Can those guys in the moment be able to make that adjustment, hit that spot, live on the lower half, or attack the outer half? However they want to go about each hitter, are they able to have that pitch execution? At the very least, be able to start limiting, see that trend of extra base hits come down, because that is a killer right now.
Nebraska sitting at 5-8 on the year, 1-2 in the Big Ten. A couple of non-conference games in the midweek, 6:00 first pitch, Tuesday and Wednesday, both of those against Wichita State here in Lincoln Hawksfield at Haymarket Park. And then that road swing you were talking about. Here's what each of those days is. Friday, Saturday, Sunday at UCLA, Tuesday, Wednesday at Pepperdine, then Friday, Saturday, Sunday at USC, and then Tuesday in Manhattan, Kansas. You don't even come all the way back yet before you get a stretch of home games and games inside the state's border. So that is a long road trip. That is a Major League Baseball road trip going along the West Coast, but that's what you're going to get. Baseball's first, although they had obviously the non-con where you're in Arizona and then you're in Texas and Louisiana. I get that, but now you're doing it for conference games to where you stay through the midweek.
Yep.
This is what conference expansion is. This is where you are with that now.